So hello everybody and welcome to Cricket Ireland's Championing Female Leaders web series On the Front Foot. I'm Marie Crowe from RTE Sport and this is our second edition of the series this week, and we're going to explore culture and engagement, and with a very stellar panel too, as you can see there on the screen. So I'm delighted to say we are joined by Sandbrook, Elaine Nolan and Rosy Ryan. So Rosy is the Women and Girls Participation Manager at CricHIIT Scotland. Her accent might give that away as well, as you'll hear, and is the inventor of the award-winning CricHIIT programme. Rosy represented Scotland at youth cricket and worked with CricHIIT Scotland in various roles as well, so loads of experience there. Ian Sandbrook owns and operates Sport for Good Consulting in New Zealand. Ian is also a former youth international representing the New Zealand Black Caps at under-19s level, and Elaine Nolan is a former Irish international cricketer and was appointed to the role of Participation Director at CricHIIT Ireland in 2016. And Elaine has also loads of experience living in New Zealand for 10 years and holding various roles, including Games Development Manager for New Zealand Cricket, and she's also created lots of female specific programs, including the Go Girl program. So there is lots of very wise heads there for us to tap into today. So we're going to be touching on lots of things: culture, engagement, mass participation, learning from other sports, the importance of communication, engagement, being open-minded, dealing with parents. So many important issues we're going to get through today. So just a real quick overview of our running order for anyone that wasn't with us last week. So what we do is we're going to hear a little bit from our panelists, just how they've got to where they are, their journeys, and then we're going to have a discussion, a panel discussion, and then there'll be a Q&A. So we have some very insightful questions already in from our audience. So Rosy, do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi everyone. I'm delighted to be here today, and really good to, I guess, kind of keep going with the Cricket Ireland stuff. We're doing a wee bit at the moment, so obviously with the CricHIIT programme, so it's really exciting just to have a wee conversation. Good to chat to Elaine and Ian as well. I've been at CricHIIT Scotland for about nearly 4 years now, which is mad to think. Sandbrook was there in my interview when I first started. So I started off as Women and Girls Development Officer, and that was just on a part-time basis, and I was probably in that role for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and then I moved to Development Officer of the West of Scotland, just a general kind of role, not just specifically on women and girls. And then I had an opportunity to apply for the Women and Girls Participation Manager. It was then, now it's Development Manager. We've had a bit of a change there, so it's now Development. So then I've been in this role now for the past nearly year, which has been a bit of a shaky year, but yeah, it's been exciting, and hopefully I think in the next year or so there's going to be some big changes and some exciting kind of times to come. So yeah, I guess that's a quick summary of me. Yeah.
Great. Well, I think everybody is in the same situation with having a bit of a shaky year, but look, when it leads to discussions like this and opportunities afterwards, I'm sure everyone will have spent the time reflecting and probably learn a lot from the last few months as well. Elaine?
Well, I've been in participation director role for 3 years with CricHIIT Ireland, but prior to that, I grew up playing cricket, was briefly an international, and it gave me the opportunity to travel overseas. We were due to go to Pakistan in 2007 to World Cup qualifiers, and the competition got cancelled because of the unrest, and it was moved to South Africa in 2008. But I went to New Zealand on the way to South Africa to play some cricket. One of my teammates was out there, Katrina Beggs, and she's still out there. And training with her and meeting people through the local cricket association just opened up some really awesome doors for me at the time. So I started coaching, originally started delivering in the kind of junior program space, which is that kind of 5 to 9 year olds, bobbling tennis balls in the schoolyard and running sessions. But then also kind of coaching under 21s and managing under 21s representative, but kind of fell into the administration side, and it's actually where my heart kind of really wanted to stay. Coaching wasn't exactly for me, but the administration really really inspired me because I wanted to see how we could improve what we were doing to create better experiences and get more kids engaged. So how do we make it better for and more fun for kids, and how do we hook parents into that, into cricket basically. And kind of had a bit of a baptism of fire. So for 5 years, I kind of worked my way through from development to administration and cricket operations, to then taking up the position as game development manager with New Zealand Cricket, and nearly 4.5 years with them. And we kind of revamped junior programs. We a lot of work with the associations, and cross paths with Ian briefly as he was heading off to Scotland. I think I was arriving into my role with New Zealand Cricket. So the role came up with Cricket Ireland in 2017, and I just thought, what an amazing opportunity to bring back everything I'd learned and experienced in what is a very, very powerhouse nation of sport. And they're a bit ahead of us on their development and how they operate. So to get that opportunity to come back and bring that into the Irish space was a bit of a dream, really. And that's 3 years now I've been in the position, and we've been kind of chipping away in the background to put the building blocks in place. And it's great to catch up with Rosy and Ian again collectively. We crossed paths in 2017 when ECB, England and Wales Cricket Board, were setting up All Stars Cricket, and Cricket Scotland were picking up, and we were looking at it whether we could implement it in Ireland. So there's been a lot of conversations between Cricket Scotland and Cricket Ireland, which has been fantastic. A lot of sharing of IP and showing how we can kind of collectively grow the game. So very excited for this conversation today to see where it leads and what happens next.
It just shows how small the world is as well, that you have cross paths as well. It's great. Ian.
Thanks for having me on and giving me the opportunity to talk on this forum. I suppose a little bit about me. In a lot of ways, I started off as a volunteer and a committee member and a coach and all those things at the grassroots, which is kind of where my passion lies. But I've also, developed, I suppose, my own abilities and my own career, working up again, development officer, operations within what we'd call regional or district association cricket in New Zealand, which I suppose similar to your guys' regions in a lot of ways over there, to spending sort of 5 years with Cricket Scotland, most recently up until about 2018, where I was head of participation there, and hence crossing paths with Elaine and Rosy and working with all those fantastic people. Then I moved back to New Zealand in 2018 and saw it as an opportunity and I suppose a point in my life to really hone in on something I'm passionate about and go out on my own. And I set up Sport for Good Consulting to work in that area. I thought there was a little bit of a gap in this community sport area, and I had some skills and expertise, and that's been a real challenge, really enjoyable for anyone who's gone out and on their own as well. You can probably understand those feelings. So that's been a really exciting journey, and worked with national bodies mainly in New Zealand, Australia, and in the UK as well. But in a funny kind of way, and I know this is a little bit about leadership in the space, I kind of don't see myself as a leader in a weird kind of way. And I think my funny kind of journey into all of this is, I just try and be the best collaborator and learner that I can be, and be passionate about what I do. And I suppose, a little lesson around leadership, finding those sort of skills and that passion and that collaboration for me is the way leadership's going. And those people who demonstrate that in their area are the ones that probably tend to come to the fore as well. So hopefully I can share some of my experience with you all today.
Well, we're all looking forward to it. We actually had a leadership discussion last week, and it was so interesting with some of our top sports women in Ireland, and we learned a huge amount of it. But we're looking forward to tapping into, I think this time they were all athletes. This time it's a different type of leadership, I think, as well. And you do need leadership off the field as well, whether it's in governance, administration, sponsorship, consulting, and no doubt we will get into some of that today. I'm going to start with you, Ian, if you don't mind, when we get this panel discussion going, because we're going to be talking about culture. And when we talk about culture over here, anyway, a lot of the conversations go back to New Zealand sport, and particularly the All Blacks and what they've managed to create. And it's quite an interesting discussion, because when you look at what they have done over there, and you know, it's almost laid out, and you know, there's books written about it, and it seems to be that they understand what it is, but trying to replicate that and change a culture and grow a culture isn't as easy as just going out reading a book about the All Blacks. But how do you do that? I mean, you're from New Zealand, where there is a great culture in many different sports, and are pretty much world leaders really in culture.
Wow, $1 million question.
Straight in.
Yeah, and like you say, an area I'm really passionate in, and I do a lot of work around culture and organisational culture. The first thing I'd say about it is, don't try and replicate what someone else does. You know, and I think, like you alluded to there, around we can read a book and you can see fantastic stuff, and you know, the All Blacks is something that's really well documented. But for me, it's got to be idiosyncratic. It's got to be unique to your people and true to your people. And again, I don't want to sound really cheesy about it. So for me, is digging underneath that core of what are the real lived experiences, values, things that make you unique as a group of people, whether that's your organisation, or there'll be some similarities probably culturally. And I know New Zealand has that. I suppose, and Elaine's probably had a little bit of experience of that around what you bring to sport, and a little bit of that selfless nature, I suppose, that New Zealand culture has, that kind of gets embedded with what you do. So for me, it's yes, pick out some of the good things and always sharing best practice and benchmarking, but really truly find what it is about your people that's unique, gets them fired up, is genuine to them, because I do, again, lots of stuff with culture, but so much of it's artificial, unfortunately. You know, we sometimes see a lot of rolling of the eyes, and we pull out the cookie cutter value statements, and everyone kind of goes through the motions. So again, how can you really make it unique to your people, whether that's simply at your club or your team, or if you're in a leadership position in your organisation. For me, that's the starting point, and you can only start there. You know, what flows from those conversations will determine where that culture will kind of start to be moulded and created, and also probably emphasising that it's not just a magic fix. Here's the playbook and culture's brilliant. It's an ongoing, constant evolution and commitment to it. And I think probably if there's one thing that you can probably say about the All Black culture, is a constant commitment to that and those values and what they do. So yeah, they're kind of my little thoughts on that kind of hugely important question. And if I had the answers, I'd be a really wealthy man.
I think everybody feels that, if you could just bottle it and understand it and find out what works for you, then it would be great. But it does take time. And Elaine, it seems as well, as Ian said there, that a lot of it is learning from your experiences and then finding out what works for you. You have spent time in New Zealand, and then you've came back, and you mentioned in your intro that you learned quite a lot. What did you learn over there that you found could work or has worked in Ireland, or could help to develop cricket here?
Yeah, I think the way Kiwis and New Zealanders kind of approach a situation or a problem is really interesting, and probably one of the biggest differences I've kind of found with coming back. You list something. Oh, I've got a problem. I need to do this. They'll have 8 different solutions for it, and they will consistently try all of them till one of them works. And there's no, I suppose, fear of failure in that situation. And it is very much an ingrained kind of cultural thing within the New Zealand people. They call it number 8 wire, the fence wire, which will mean nothing to people in Ireland. It probably took me 2 years to tweak what anybody was talking about. But, piece of wire, fix the fence, and they'll use number 8 wire to fix anything. So like a really solution based, and not really afraid to fail. And there's, a lot of accountability within organizations, and people feel themselves accountable for what they're doing and how they deliver it. Their approach to sports is really quite holistic, and on a broad sense, there's obviously always issues about people on specializations, etc. But in a general sense, there's a view of don't specialize early, try all of the sports, and you'll end up with a really well-rounded, well-formed athlete. And kids are really active, and they're out and they're playing in the schoolyard, they're out on the beach, they're in the field. And they're constantly playing. So, skill acquisition and the programs that you deliver are kind of mature in that sense. They really do focus on the skill acquisition and the enjoyment of the child to push that kind of long-term engagement in sport. And I think we do that quite well in Ireland. But there's a few tweaks that we need to make about, I think Irish Sports Society is quite pushing into the early specialisation and pick your sport and train in that sport, and the sports consume an entire sports calendar so the child has less choice and opportunity to try different sports. And I think that's something we can take. You know, a lot of those All Blacks all played high level cricket, which I found really interesting when I started working in New Zealand cricket, was knowing that there's quite a few of them that will have chosen kind of quite late, kind of 15, 16, 17 to go one direction or the other, but they could have played internationals for both teams. So I think that's something I've definitely taken from it. And I know when Sport New Zealand came across here, is it 2 to 3 years ago, and they presented at Federation of Irish Sports conference, they were really pushing that community connection and that holistic view of sport, of just getting people active, and all sports kind of working together to get people out and playing. And that would be one of my drivers for us, is to make sure that every kid has the opportunity at least to try cricket and try their other sports, and then you end up with that nicely rounded athlete that stays, or player who stays in your game, or volunteer who stays in the game for life.
Rosie, one thing that we seem to do here in Ireland is we tend to measure success on how the elite is doing. But when we look what you did with CricHIIT, which is mass participation and is really successful, it's like seeing another form of success and realizing, okay, it doesn't have to be a national or an elite team doing well for us to be successful in our sport. It's having all these people getting access, getting interested, and getting involved in the sport is also success. And CricHIIT almost found a way to measure that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one with CricHIIT, because what we've really done is we've kind of changed the way that things look, and actually, instead of focusing on the kind of performance side of things, we're thinking about how do we get, for example, my mum that doesn't play cricket, how do we get her involved? How do we get her involved? She's not going to go along to anything, she's not interested in it. How are we going to get her along to a cricket ground? And I think we've got to obviously think about the barriers and things like that, and the time that it takes to play a cricket game, and the cost of travelling to different games and things like that. Well, actually, we've got a programme here that can engage women and girls, that's really accessible, and also it's only 45 minutes long or an hour long, and you can bring your mates along, and it's not, you're not scaring people with a membership straight away, and you're not doing all the things that I guess can be seen as what cricket clubs can look like from the outside. You're trying to change that. I guess it is changing the culture within that, and trying to change perceptions and views, and making sure that we've got a program there that is tailor-made for anyone, and that anyone can access it. So you can go along with your mum, but you can also go along with your grandma as well, and she's going to get something out of it, you're going to get something out of it, and that's really, really exciting about CricHIIT and the programme. And obviously amazing that Cricket Ireland are getting involved in that as well. So yeah.
And we know from research and from science that women's sport is just in its infancy. Like, we don't have that bank of knowledge of what works and what doesn't work. But here you are, and you're able to share this information, and then other countries are able to capitalize on it as well, Rosie, which is a really good achievement.
Yeah, like it's been amazing. The amount of people that have been interested in CricHIIT is, it was an idea that came from a few things. So obviously you've got cardio, tennis. I mean, Ian was there at the very start when we were kind of talking about it, and then and CricHIIT was in the making. And
I think we have lost you, Rosie, there. We're going to have to...
environment, and trying to make sure that everyone feels like there's a community for you, and there is a community, because cricket in general, I know that I can get involved because I've always been involved playing the sport and playing hardball cricket, but actually not everyone's interested in playing a game for 3 hours at like which is a short game. So you know, it's just it's about everyone, and I think, how can we get everyone involved? How can we make everyone feel part of something? How can we change those mindsets? How can we do it from, if you stay in cricket, you may just stay in cricket for, you know, however many years you want to play that, or how long your club does it for. You may just stay in that, but you might actually then say, do you know what, I've got the confidence now to go into softball cricket, or I've got the confidence now to go into a little bit more of a game, or I've got the confidence now to do a little bit of hardball stuff. And then actually we start to develop a pathway a little bit more as well. And that's the really exciting part. So you can, it's fluid, you know, it's fluid how you do it. And I think that is why people have been interested in it as well, because, you know, it's not saying that you have to do this and you have to do this. Well, actually you can stay in cricket for the rest of your life if you want to. But also it's encouraged a lot of coaches to get involved, and a lot of people that haven't necessarily ever been a cricket coach, but actually now they're a CricHIIT coach, and they were interested maybe in fitness before, and maybe they didn't know about, you know, cricket in general, but just because maybe their granddad played it, but actually they're getting drip fed information on, and it's not intimidating, so they're learning slowly. And I think that's the exciting thing. It's not forcing people to get involved in cricket. It's just a simple way and a kind of sly way of saying, this is what it's about, this is quite exciting, you could do this, you could do that. So yeah.
You seem to have hit on all the important factors for getting females involved in sport and keeping them involved as well, which is like two of the hardest things to do, Rosie. So I have to say, fair play, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it progresses over the next few years. But it seems that we do need these gender-specific programs. We need to just target women and girls and just make it a little bit easier for them to have that confidence, because like that seems to be one of the things that really does hold women back when it comes to sport is that confidence.
Yeah, look, I totally agree with that, and I can't obviously comment from a personal experience, but obviously the research and what is said, just adding into Rosie's stuff there as well, and in this question is, you know, bigger picture when we're looking at that as well is, you know, what behaviours will our KPIs drive, particularly when we're talking culturally, and if we're looking at getting more females and girls and into sport, then for me that's the bigger picture leadership side of this as well. So, you know, if we're trying to drive that change, then it's really important that if our KPIs are just about the national team winning, and I'm not just picking on that as an example, then the other stuff goes by the wayside. So for me, that's the higher level stuff that will start to drip feed that change down the chain. So I think that's a really important lever to pull. And I think you chat about the inclusive programs. Look, for me, planned kind of products to market, a bit like CricHIIT, like Rosie's talked about. You know, entry level programs, we did All Stars as an example. For me, they're great disruptors and change initiators. Because one of the biggest problems I'm sure you'll face is you can tell some of these clubs or people on the ground till they're blue in the face that women's cricket or girls' cricket's got huge value to them, but they just don't change. You know, it's too hard basket. I see it loads that knowledge doesn't change behaviour in most cases. So for me, and here is those products to market that are well put together, you know, good research, development in behind them. The beauty of them is they make it easy for people, like Rosie's talking about, come in at their level, but also easy for the deliverers of it, particularly at club level that we're talking about, because most of them can't see the wood for the trees. They're busy just doing their thing. So if we can give them something packaged up nicely, that can be our change initiator. Because, and Rosie maybe will speak to this, my, you know, outside looking in on that great program is what that has done is changed mindsets within clubs. And that's grown into more serious women's cricket from that. You know, it doesn't have to, but it's created an awareness and appreciation and a true value for female cricket within a club. So they're great disruptors, you know, and change initiators, those programs, in my opinion.
For sure. And
it almost brings it back to the first principles of sport. Like, why do people get involved in sport? Because they thoroughly enjoy it and they want to enjoy themselves and have a good experience. And by putting these products back into the market, or launching these products into the market, it brings everybody back to that first principle. You're doing it because you want people to enjoy themselves within that sport environment, which then kind of feeds all of the other structures, whether it's your volunteers or gateway into, you know, playing full cricket games or whatever sport it is. But I think it's really important that enjoyment and experience is what we need to be driving in that space to push success with these programs.
What I think as well it does, Elaine, is that it normalizes women in different roles. So for a long time, you go up to your club and, you know, it's the mothers taking the jerseys home or making the tea or making the sandwiches, and they're not the ones that are out playing the game, or they're not the ones that are doing the coaching. They've got different roles, but that is starting to change. And it is programs like that that help and encourage and just completely normalize a mother or a daughter or a young girl doing different things that they might not have seen a different generation doing. And then also, I think that leads into not just women and girls playing the game, but also, as you mentioned at the top, women and girls doing different roles within club. And often that is administration roles. And not everybody's going to want to go and play a game of cricket, but they might manage the social media account. They might become the PRO. They might become the secretary. And that's all part of changing the culture and the environment and the way we look at women in sport.
Yeah, and I think that will fundamentally change. Like I remember when I first started in New Zealand, 2008, 2009, you know, we'd go to a district association or a development conference, and there was probably 50 males in the room and there'd be 2 females. So there would be 2 female development staff, myself and somebody else who was actually from the same region, but really limited in that space of you know, it wasn't a traditional role. But it's massively changing, and it should change. It needs to change, that diversity and equity in that space, and just even the diversity in thinking and approach is just, it needs to be in club life to breathe life back into club space and to grow sport.
Rosy, when you were setting it up, what did you find were the biggest challenges and hurdles that you had to overcome to implement it successfully?
Yeah, look, I think I'd be naive to say that sub clubs wouldn't take it on, because it would be, you know, they didn't have a female in that role. But then again, you know, you've got to ask around. You've got to see, this is a programme that's not made for people that know about cricket at all. This programme's actually made for people that don't know about cricket, and we can, like Ian said, we can give you those tools to help you. So I think the thing was that maybe was only, you know, a very small fraction, but actually it is a culture thing, and changing mindsets, and people actually started to realise, you know, okay, so if you're not enjoying it, if maybe you don't think, as a male, you don't know if you're quite sure in the product, maybe ask your wife, what would she enjoy that? Oh yeah, she would. Okay, there we go then. So, you know, it's an easy winner sometimes, those types of conversations. And you know, some clubs have taken it up. One club in particular managed to, they didn't have a women's section, and they took up cricket, and then managed to go into softball festivals and things like that, and games, and then ended up going into our national indoor tournament in the wintertime that we hold, which is just one of the best possible outcomes. You know, as a development manager, that is one of the best possible outcomes, that you can see people starting to go through the pathway, and then starting to look towards, you know, even hardball cricket if they want to. But that's great, in that they start to find a love of more than just that programme in itself, that they start to find a love of cricket in general. So I think there was, once clubs like that started to get involved, and there was actual, I guess, tangible change, and people could actually see that there was a lot going on, and, you know, stories were coming out of it, and I guess some women, one club in particular in Edinburgh, a woman who had lost her love for cricket, got back into CricHIIT because it was easy, it was accessible. She got back into it, and then that's her now playing in the Women's Premier League again, that woman, because she came back to that. So those are the types of stories that are just so great to hear, and really, really touching as well. And that's what it's about. It's not about you getting a hardball women's team out of it, and this is the way to go, and you do this for 5 weeks, and then we're going to put you straight into the nets. Like, it's not about that. It's about what can it do for you as a person. And I think if we can get those stories and really hold on to those, and I'm sure Cricket Ireland will in the next year or so, if you can, you know, make sure that you're finding out about those stories and what that social change is, then that's really, really exciting, because that makes for a kind of lasting participant and a lifetime participant. And I think it is about those role models as well. And you'll know more than anyone, everyone that's here at the moment will know that they've got someone that they have looked up to and that has got them into cricket, or a moment that got them into cricket, or a moment that got them into a sport. And I think if that moment can be during or going to a CricHIIT session, then that's even better.
We have a great 20 by 20 movement here, which is trying to increase the visibility and participation and just grow women's sport, and it's been in operation for the last number of years, and it's heading into its final chapter now, and just trying to change mindsets and attitudes to women's sport. And I think over the last few years, definitely from just a visual point of view, we're seeing a lot more women's sport in the papers, we're hearing it on the radio, we're seeing it on television, we're more aware of our role models, and it's really been working, but we've had to force that change. And there is obviously a concern now when 20 by 20 comes to an end, that force of nature that has been in our midst for the last few years isn't going to be there, and that women's sport is going to suffer. What's it like in New Zealand? Do you have a similar situation where you've had to actively push women's sport into the public sphere?
I mean, I think there's direct parallels. It's no different. The same challenges, the same programs, and you know, similar stuff to try and drive a lot of that change and make it embedded. You know, that for me, that's the real challenges. You know, it's like a lot of the movements we're seeing across the world, whether it's Black Lives Matter, you know, all of those similarities, you know, is how can you make it not just lip service or a shiny little program that maybe creates a bit of awareness, which is great, but actual truly embedded change. So look, we're absolutely no different. The same challenges, still a long way to go. And to kind of add into Rosy's comments here, when you're talking about some of the challenges that you have, and for me, again, is how savvy are we at really managing that change process within our sphere of what you're doing. So again, wherever you're operating, whether it's at a national level or a club or a regional or whatever, how are you managing that change process? Because sometimes I think we're a little bit, you know, we'll put out this, you know, great little social media campaign or a new product, and we kind of just hope. I think we've got to be more planned than that and actually understand how we really influence and manage change over a longer period to make it stick better. And that's no different than trying to change any kind of process, really. But are we applying that to female sport and to, you know, we're talking cricket here, you know, specifically, how do we do that, particularly within our clubs or our associations, that they take some of this stuff on board? And that's the sort of stuff I'm really interested in, and always on my little, you know, daft laddie questions in there to try and dig a bit deeper on some of these programs to what is actually in behind that that's going to embed change, which, hey, it's not an easy answer. I don't think anyone's cracked it yet either, but you know, I think there's some stuff we need to do in a little bit more detail to kind of make that happen.
Elaine, I'm sure you've got thoughts on that, and probably have a future and a vision for what change you would like to encourage and manage in cricket over the next number of years.
Yeah, and Ian is right. I think that the change management piece is really, really important. And Ian actually did some work for us last year with our clubs about club engagement and community engagement, etc. And we had some really good conversations about that change management piece. Sport has kind of evolved into, you know, an industry and a business, and we don't necessarily always look and manage, as you say, that process that well. And I think at the moment we look to push it really quickly. You know, we know we have a great product, we've something that we really want to do, but let's go quick, let's go. But actually bring everybody on that journey, even though it's going to take a bit longer, is a really important piece of that process. And actually, you know, I think sometimes NGBs, we're seen as we sit in an ivory tower. What do you know? We're on the ground. You don't deal with the day in, day out. And actually giving the clubs and the volunteers and players that voice in that space to be able to say, actually, yeah, we really like that idea, but actually maybe it should operate like this. And just ensuring that, you know, we're having the conversations, but we're also marketing ourselves in the most appropriate way and reaching the people that we need to reach. And sometimes we become a bit insular with our conversations. So we're having the same conversation, we're having a different conversation with the same people, and they're like, we've heard it before, you've tried this before, but, you know, are we forcing that conversation wider, and are we targeting, in this case, you know, mums and daughters and the aunts, and you know, are really showing what cricket can do in that space. And as Rosie mentioned, it's that social change piece and what sport can do in that space. And as you said, Marie, about the normalisation of it and normalising women's sports. And we really have to, the 20 by 20 campaign, I think, has been absolutely phenomenal. And their video release last week was just breathtaking and eye-opening, and it was frustrating and it was amazing. And but really, you know, we all now have accountability and an obligation to carry that on. And it's that consistent application of what they're saying. And it's going to take us a few years, it might take us 10 years to do it, for it to be completely normalized. And I think that's the exciting part of the journey. And I think you can see more global and world and even local collaboration. And that word came up so many times last week in the webinar. It's the collaboration and the conversation that are going to make the change and the lasting change in the space. So yeah, hopefully we'll continue doing that and pushing that.
That leads me into a question actually for you, Elaine, that's been sent in, and it's about the role of parents and how important are they as we try and make that change?
Oh, massively, massively important. You know, we look at kids and the kind of marketing dream. If you market to the child and they have pester power with their parents and they go home, you have to capture the parents when they come and arrive in it, and give them a fantastic experience and go, my child is safe here. I really enjoy the environment. And I think cricket is probably one of the hidden gems in Ireland, and it's probably Scotland as well. Like the sense of community that sits within a cricket club environment that we don't necessarily promote on the outside. And it's only when you bring people into it and they kind of see it and go, this is amazing. You know, my local club, I was gone for 10 years, but I can still walk down and say hello and see people. And I think we need to do that with kids and parents. We have to give the kid great experience, but we have to be mindful that we're communicating and targeting parents in the right way as well, and making sure parents understand what the sport is about and how they can get involved. And they don't need to know the ins and outs of a 5-hour game, but there's things that the sport can benefit from them, and it's pulling their expertise and their knowledge into the sport as well, and letting them help shape the sport for their child.
You know, how do you get that message across? Because it is a great message, and you know, it's not easy to when lives are so busy, for people to understand what they could get by bringing their kids down to a club.
You go in.
So, yeah, look, it's tough. What I would say is again, is just how simple can we make it? You know, and for me, how do we reach out to people at a real human level and be realistic that we're not going to get everyone and every parent. So for me, is how do we put on these opportunities that embrace the great things of cricket and bring them in and talk to the parents and support, encourage, educate them in a way. And I think using some tools that maybe hit parents, that demystify cricket, that, you know, talk about things at their language and for their kids, you know, those simple things. And how do we just chip away at that? I think everyone wants this magic bullet, that, you know, pill that somehow we're going to have all these parents that are up and singing and dancing and, you know, championing cricket. What actually happens is you put on a night at your club or in your association and you get 20 or 30 parents come along and you sell that message to them and you grab them and you support them, and you might get 6, 7, 8 of them who are really into it. But that's 6, 7, 8 people that will make a huge difference to that club, to those kids' lives. You know, so for me, it's just small little steps. You know, we just got to be realistic about how we do that, and do we build in those opportunities to pull parents in, and we have to be a little bit creative, and that might be a bit gimmicky or ways that can get them in the door, to get them in front of you to be able to help them sell that message and what you're trying to do. So look, it's not easy, but I also think, you know, how we act as the team leader in a lot of ways, you know, it's no different to bringing up your kids. I know this sounds a bit weird, but, you know, what example do you set? you know, how do you give attention and build trust with them, with your parents? And for me, that's actually the real important things of those programs that we do, because the kids will love it. The product's actually really good that we do. For me, the important thing is actually the parents and the global kind of impact that you can have with them. So, you know, how do you give them attention? How do you build trust with them? Not just treat them as, you know, some kind of commodity and make sure they pay their fees and that sort of thing. You know, we got to get a little bit more human connection, in my opinion.
One thing that always comes up is trying to keep girls in sport, and we have a question in about that for you, and it's whether or not those programs like CricHIIT, like specific gender target programs, do they help with keeping girls in sport? Because that's a major issue, as the statistics have told us.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, when we see the dropout rate that we do at the moment, I mean, by 17 years old, more than half have dropped out of sport. Half of girls have dropped out of sport already. From a personal point of view, I stopped playing. I was always played football, soccer in Ireland, but I was always playing football, and I got into cricket a little bit later on. But I dropped out of that at the age of about 12 years old, and I didn't play for a wee while going into secondary school. And my mum, just going back on that parents as leaders things, I remember she kind of pushed me back into it, got in touch with the PE teacher, and they got me back into a club. But that was the thing with that was it was quite interesting, because I look at that now and I think, was that because I wasn't in a girls only environment? And I wasn't in a girls only environment. I was comparing myself to boys and looking at them, and especially as they're getting older and things like that, we're growing at different rates and things, and some are getting faster, and it can discourage you as well. And I think we need to make sure that we create an empowering environment, and especially with, you know, female only programs and things like that, what we're doing is we're making sure that we're in an environment that's comparable, and you can compare yourself to, I guess, someone else, but also you're making it an empowering environment, and an environment you can build your own confidence. And so when we talk about, I know I keep talking about cricket at the moment, but when we talk about cricket, it's really just working on yourself. It's not as a team as much. It's you as an individual and what you're getting out of it. So we talk about, you know, if we've got your grandma that's going along and then yourself that's going along, you're going to be two different standards. You can do different things, but how can we adapt that and make that enjoyable for that user? And that's really, really important when we're doing that. So I think, you know, the women and girls only programs are a huge benefit, because obviously with all the barriers that come across, like, what do I wear? What if there's someone that's going to beat me at the park? What if a guy's bowling at me 100 miles an hour? What if, and you know, and that was the thing with CricHIIT, like, it's making sure that people are in an environment to kind of thrive and flourish. If we've got our first team men's captain going along to it, are they actually going to get anything out of that? Probably not. But what they will do as well is they may, you know, make that an environment that's not comfortable for everyone to kind of be in, and that's the main thing. It's the empowerment of how we can make sure that these women and girls only environments are really empowering, and every individual is getting what they need out of it, and that's down to the coach as well, obviously. But what we can give to the coaches when we're doing you know, the activator trainings and things like that, what we can kind of armour them with is really important as well, and I think the programme does that.
And Ian, as well, like, it's trying to find that balance, because there are going to be all different types of girls and women involved in the sport, and some of them might end up going on to be high performance and elite, and making sure that that's encouraged too in an environment which is fun, that the athlete is developed as well.
Without a doubt. I was just going to add in there, you know, like, for me, it's probably statistically a little bit early to tell whether some of these female-only programs are, you know, longer term, keeping girls in the game longer. We probably need to give it a little bit longer. But I would also say is, how well was it working before we were introducing these female-only programs? So for those who are perhaps naysayers and, critical of them. You know, I'd probably point to some pretty damning statistics before with like Rosy's lived experience sometimes, you know, having to muck in with the boys and that. But for me, the key is that multi-channeled kind of pathway. And you're talking about it, Marie, around those who are competitive and want to go to the top. Holy cow, we've got to look after them. They want to do that. We should be doing that. And for me, it's about creating those pathways that are maybe competitive, recreational, and social. So, and that doesn't always have to be female only, because ultimately they want to join in with boys and mix in and do all that sort of stuff as well. So for me, it's trying to use the female programs as an initiator, a pulling into people and drawing them in. But then how do we evolve our pathways, our offerings as a sport, that we are now giving people those options? Because cricket's been very one-dimensional, traditional for a long time. And so how do we create those opportunities that if you are just the auntie or the mum that wants to do CricHIIT or softball cricket and that's it, that's cool, that's awesome. And I can play that down at my club on a Friday night, great. But I do, if I want to be the competitive girl that's come in at the, you know, intro program and had a blast and I love it and I've fallen in love with the game, I have a clear pathway and I can play international cricket and be supported. That has to be our goal, in my opinion.
Elaine, what it seems to boil down to, though, is that we just don't know yet, because we're still so early in what we're finding out and learning about women's sport. But we do know that there are now voices like yourself and like Rosy, female voices who are there and they're at the decision-making process and they're helping for people to learn and to know what is best and what works for girls. I mean, how important is it to have those female voices there making the decisions and lending their voices and their life experiences, like Rosy, to figure out what is the best way to make it an environment and a place where girls are going to be playing sport for as long as they want to be playing sport?
It's hugely important because, you know, we look at male sports structures, they're very much embedded, they're really mature, and without the female voice in that space, we'd be in danger of just replicating that whole thing and moving it over and saying, there you go. We know that doesn't work. We know there's different motivators. We know there's different needs. So we need to champion that and have those conversations, but also, I suppose, check and challenge the whole system, and having diversification of thought and conversation really puts tension in that system, and it just allows us to be able to shape a new pathway. And I think that's, you know, it's really important. It's about that connected pathway, but it's not replicating it over and over again, and the opportunity to try and fail and fix it is really important as well, and not be afraid of that. So hugely important to have, you know, the female voices in the space, but not only for female sport, but I think for male sport as well, to really kind of push the thinking about what we're doing and how we do it, and equalize opportunities across the board. And I think it's, you know, really important that we're seeing female athletes and female sport on television, and, you know, getting those brand ambassadors and that profile really raised, but also giving communities the opportunity to engage and connect and learn from each other and just have really great sporting experiences on the ground.
Rosy, it can be frustrating, you know, when you do hear stories about, you know, lack of coverage or the numbers dropping out, or, you know, lack of sponsorship, or just, you know, even tournaments disbanding for different reasons. But at the same time, though, it is quite exciting to know that at least we're hearing about this and we are starting to make progress. And, you know, we are hearing about equal pay and increases in access to facilities and to teams, and, you know, being able to turn on the TV and see our female role models. So we're on the road, which is, it's only a small thing, but at least it's something. And like that in itself, knowing that the journey has started and we're having conversations like this as well, you know, it's quite heartening and positive.
Yeah, it's a funny one. I think when I look back, and when I was younger, I would look to, I guess, guy football players and things like that, and it was always like I would turn up to World Book Day dressed as a male footballer. Like I wasn't even a female footballer, I was a male footballer turning up, and I was just like, this is normal. And it's quite funny when I look back on that, because now these types of things are changing, and like I'm still involved in football, and I coach a girls team, and it's so funny when they start talking about, you know, the female players, and obviously Scotland did really well in football, and we're in the World Cup and things like that. last year, and those are the types, that coverage just has a whole different platform to it. It just gets those conversations going. So you've got, you know, instead of someone turning up to World Book Day as Henrik Larsson, it's now, you know, it's a different, it's Kim Little, it's someone else, it's a female, and that is that's really exciting because it is comparable, you know, at that age, and that is a real role model to look towards. And these are just the things that make the biggest difference, and starting to see those role models coming through, and I think also visible role models is just so important as well, whether it be down at your club, whether it's you know, your 16-year-old that plays a bit of hardball, get her down, get her involved with the, you know, the young ones, get her involved in the All-Stars, because at the end of the day, that's going to boost her confidence, that's going to make the little ones have someone to look up to, and also the boys as well. And I think we sometimes forget about that. Is actually one of my best friends who's living over in New Zealand, she was talking about when she was looking after a family of kids, and one of the boys, she was asking who his favourite athletes were, and he was naming all these female players. And I just think that is amazing. That is someone that's been in an environment that has gone and been told to, you know, gone to watch male footballers and female footballers and things like that in games, and that's normal, and that should be normal. So you know, it goes back to that parents as leaders as well, that actually we need to be setting an example. Not that I'm a parent yet, but you know, we can really set an example in clubs and as parents, that, you know, who are we showing our kids, what are we exposing them to, who can we make them look up to. If there's a game going on in down 10 minutes down the road, and we know it's a women's game, let's get them down, let's get them watching it, and encouraging. I think, you know, we've got a way that we can do that within clubs, and making sure that we're encouraging people to go down, and don't forget the value of making a day of that, rather than making it a day of you know, going to the pictures.
I completely agree, and just even a couple of weeks ago, the Women's Champions League final was on RTÉ television, and I was watching it with one of my kids, and Wendy Reynard scored, and he said to me, "Oh, I saw her playing in the World Cup for France." So just having it on the TV and being able to see it and having a reference point, and again, just completely normal, sitting down, watching the Women's Champions League final, and been able to look back on seeing the World Cup, which was on terrestrial television as well. So I have a question in here. I'm not sure it's for, but I might give it to you, Ian. Do you think to increase women in sport and girls' participation, you need women leading the programs, or does it having a male champion pushing the program show women that it's not only women who want to see that culture change occur?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of cases a female role model does help. But what I often say, and we had this again with All Stars with Rosy, but a lot of the programs I've been involved in, that leader can be male or female. It's about what are again their actions as a team leader, how inclusive are they, what experience are they giving the children. So for me, while in some situations or groups of people, a female might be more appropriate, hey, I don't think it matters personally. It should just be about what are they bringing as a coach, what environment are they creating, because I've seen plenty of examples of superb male coaches working with young girls, and they love it. They absolutely love it, and they can provide the same enjoyment and, you know, love of the game and learning opportunities and acquisition. So for me, I think it can be a cop out if we say it needs to be a female and that's coming from a male. And I'd rather we didn't do that, in my opinion.
Rosy, what do you think?
No, I agree. I think at the end of the day, I've been brought up with male coaches. I'm still involved with sport. I think it, again, it's just dependent on the person. And I think, you know, athletes that are within performance programs would probably say the same. I mean, some may have a preference, but I think there's not any indication to prove that it should be females only and it should be males only. I don't think that's fair to say, and actually that's it's probably not very and you know, I think at the end of the day we've got to really it does matter about the type of person you are. When it comes to coaching, it's just like a teacher. It matters in the person, whether you click with them or not, whether they're male or female, it doesn't matter.
Can I just add in again, Marie? Sorry to butt in. You know, there's some parallels there for me. One thing I hate, like maybe at a governance level, is, you know, a female might get on a board and you go, okay, it's female cricket time, and everyone just looks to the female on the board. You know, it's a classic, isn't it? So for me, it's the same mindset and concept that it's everyone's responsibility. It's everyone's. So it should be a male or female. It shouldn't matter. Same when that discussion comes up at a committee or board level. It's not just look to Rosy or Elaine because they're our token female now on the committee. We've got to get away from that. It's a group responsibility and gendering that mindset.
Yeah, we want sport to be sport, but we have to focus on women's sport at the moment to level it with the male platform, and then sport just to be sport.
And I think it's really important when you have a male voice as well. It's so empowering when you've got someone next to you that's championing female or women and girls cricket. There's nothing and anything in sport actually, and it's just such a powerful message when you've got someone backing that up. So that should be, you know, running through your boards, running through your committees and things like that. And, you know, it's something that we all know as people, but making sure that we've got that person that feels as passionate next to you, or championing that, a male champion of female sport. There's nothing. It's just great, because then, you know, you've got everyone's buy-in, and I think that's really a powerful message, and a powerful message in clubs as well.
Do you think though, Ian, that to get away from that we need to have more women on boards? And I don't mean like as it stands now when there's only one or two, but actual quotas. So we've made a change here in Ireland where the OFI have a 40% ruling now on all boards. Yeah,
look, I think I suppose the short answer is yes. I mean, we've done the same here in New Zealand around Sport New Zealand stipulating that for national governing bodies around a 40% benchmark. I mean, for me, I know the concept of diversity of thought has come up. For me, diversity of thought's achieved as a result of diversity of representation, if that makes sense. Because, you know, I get the concept, but for me, once you give people and females seats at the table, so inclusion in there and actual power at the table, so actual equity, then we start to get somewhere. So for me, I think where there is a little bit of the stick kind of needed, you know, I think that we're just at that space to get the ball rolling. So I do agree with it essentially to start that, but I suppose the best case scenario, and we can get to a stage where it just becomes properly representative of your membership and your population.
I look at it as like a leg up, and then once the leg is up and everybody is where they should be, it all kind of evens itself out anyway. And look, I think it's a process, it's a journey, we're on it, and I think that's a real positive. Like, it might just be small baby steps every now and again, but if we can just keep moving forward, and I think keep replicating what we've done over the last while in terms of progress, and like the 20 by 20, and like what we're doing right here, right now today, and cricket, and just keep doing the best that we can, that we will see real meaningful change. And I just think in 10 years time, the landscape for women's sport, when you just look at the progress over the last few years, since people have really made a concerted effort, that the landscape is going to be completely different. And you know what, we won't need to have these conversations, we need to have them now, and I'm really enjoying them, and they're great. But I can't wait to get to a stage where we're looking at something completely different that we need to change. But look, Elaine, Rosy and Ian, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. We're going to be back next week. We've Mary Waldron, Maeve Buckley and Carl Lyons joining us as well for another one of these webinars, which I hope that are insightful. But I definitely learned a lot, guys. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Marie.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.